All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome once again. Coming up is a panel of esteemed industry specialists, and this panel has generated quite a lot of buzz. The role of artificial intelligence in the future work strategy. Isn't it a fantastic topic? We have some very interesting people in the panel today. So let's call on the platform Mr. Jayakumar Mohan Chandran from ISA Saleh Al Gurg, Mr. Raj Rishi from Tata Communications, Mr. Badr Makhtari from RSA Global, and this session is going to be moderated by Mr. Ajay Rathi, ex-director IT of the Dubai Healthcare City Authority. So take it over the panelists and have a very good session.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ajay Rathi. Along with me are three esteemed panelists. I'll ask them to introduce one by one. Jay, can you please introduce yourself to the audience?
Hey, thanks, Ajay. Good afternoon, everyone. This is Jayakumar Mohanachandran. I'm the Group CIO for ISA Saleh Al Gurg. So we are a conglomerate based here in UAE, and I'm working here for the past 5 years.
Raj?
Thanks, Ajay. Hi, everyone. My name is a bit long. My name is Rajarshi Purkayastha, but you can just call me Raj. I'm responsible for pre-sales for India and Mecca region for Tata Communications. Have been in telecom for quite a while, more than 2 decades now, and looking forward to exciting times. Over to you, Ajay.
Badri?
Yeah, my name is Badr Makhtari with RSA Global, a logistics 3PL provider based in Dubai and covering other regions. So heading the business technology and some initiatives most recently in RPA, robotic process automation, conveyor belt optimization, and the like.
Thank you very much. So the topic on which we are going to have a discussion is, does AI have a role to play in our future work strategy? Now, if you think of artificial intelligence, we are talking about it a lot nowadays, but this particular word was coined in 1956, almost more than a 6 decade ago. But at that time, everybody knew that the computers have only the transactions. They never had a memory storage. So it never picked up. A bit of it was picked up 40 years later in 1997 when Gary Kasparov was defeated by IBM's Deep Blue. And a lot of interest got generated, but then interest remained there itself in the field of the gamings. Watson came in 2011 with the Jeopardy. Then recently in 2017, AlphaGo, Google's AlphaGo, defeated the Chinese champion. So more and more of it was being used in the sports arena. It never came up to be in the business, but on the sidewise, if you look at Watson, initially was there for Jeopardy, but slowly developed a lot of other components and started using in medical fields and started using in law firms. AI has over a period of time been growing very fast. And in the last 5 years, if you look at it, like the driverless cars, I mean, everybody knows how much of AI is being used there, personal assistant, NLPs, medical diagnosis. Even if you look at it, this COVID-19, we've seen a lot of people using AI to diagnose and find out the reasons of this. And more and more research is happening and trying to use AI. But how it is gonna affect our work strategy? Because we all have to see to it. We may not all be in the fields of where AI has been used, but AI is getting more and more embedded into our areas. So my first question is with Raj. Work from home was a big taboo, specifically and I can say is in UAE. We have seen that last year, 10% of the people had an option to work 1 or 2 days work from home. But the COVID-19 changed everything. It has now becoming a bit of a norm now. How do you think of it that AI is going to transform your IT and business strategy going forward because of this?
Yeah, Ajay, I was listening to the fascinating note that you're saying. AI has done a few things over the last few decades, but then yes, work from home is a different ball game. And as you said, work from home was not really used that much by companies, but at this point of time, that has become a forced reality, right? Now, if I think about work from home, everybody used to work from home. I'm hearing from Jay and Badri that Dubai has opened up. India is still not open up. So from that perspective, I'm working from home. Work from home at times is lonely, right? And from that perspective, the collaboration that you used to do across other people, the camaraderie that we had with other people, that's getting lost. Now, this is where AI is going to come in, and through virtual assistants that you can build, you can actually build new virtual team members who can do your job or work with you in the same way that you're working in office. Now, this is something which will be there in the future, along with even conversational tools with people across boundaries, across geos, different languages, and so on and so forth. But then, if we talk about today, let's take an example. In terms of when you talk about work from home, as I said, work from home is at times lonely, and you can get a bit stressed. So as a manager, how do you know that who is getting stressed? As a manager, how do you know who is requiring help? That is where AI can monitor the way you are operating on your system, the tone of your voice on calls, and inform the manager that it seems like this person is going towards a stress, and you may want to do something about it. The same thing can be done from a health perspective. Now, think about it. If you do a spot check of somebody's temperature, somebody's BP, it may be in the normal range. But then, somebody's BP can be normal at 60. And if it has reached 80, for example, and still is normal, but from his or her parlance, it's not normal, which means that it has been rising over a period of time. Now, that's where AI can also come in and tell the manager that, look, there is something which seems off about this employee. You may want to do something about it. Also, if you think about the new norm per se, it's not only working from home. You have to go back to office. Like, for example, Jay was saying he's going back to office. Now, from that parlance, AI can actually help you by telling you when you can take a lunch, for example. Lunch is important, at least for me, and I'm sure it's for Jay and Badre. So, if you're on a call, for example, and you can't take the lunch in the scheduled time because of social distancing norms which we enforced, where scheduling can be extremely important, and AI can come in and say that when can you go for the lunch break. Now, there are multiple facets like this where AI will come and help the remote employees working from office, helping them understand how customers are behaving, whether they are, even the customers are in stress or not, if they're unhappy, and therefore do you want to do something about them. So there's multitude of functions and functionalities where AI will come in and help doing those repetitive jobs in a bit different manner, which can actually help you doing your job much better. Over to you, Ajay.
Thank you. One of the interesting fact I understand is that it is going to monitor the employees more than they have been monitored now, because you are looking at their eating habits, you're looking at their sleeping habits, you're looking at their stress. So it's becoming more of a constant monitoring of for an employee. This brings to a different questions, and Badri, I'll look at it if you can answer this in a certain way. What it is showing, what Jay has said, and what Raj has said is about more invasive, and AI is now been considered as very, very invasive, and it is getting into the individual privacy of the people. He's sleeping, his heart rates are going up in the night. Why all this is happening? So people and citizens are actually getting spooked out of it. They might start hating the AI. They might have a repulsive nature of it. So even in your office environment or a work environment, how do you think AI usage will be spread across business function in a way that it is acceptable? We don't want the business to give us a pushback. if you want to use AI, how do you think it has to be spread across the business and it is more acceptable?
Yeah, I think it's a fantastic question that you raised. Like, how is the data being utilized for, let's say, operational benefit, for HR, and so on? So, I mean, broadly speaking, I mean, one of the key things that people are worried about is transparency, right? And this refers to disclosing how the data that all the devices that are out there, whether it be IoT devices, cameras, and some of the other biometric information, starts bringing all of that information into one place, and how it's utilizing it. So I think that's one thing I think people just want to be aware: is everything that I am presented with, and am I entering, for example, a building that's collecting my license plate number, my face, and then, is it passing on that information somewhere else? That's one of the key things. Now, some governments, as well as some institutions, they're actually using this information to make autonomous decision making. So I think this is where you'll see a lot of bodies, whether they be in US or in Europe, where they're looking at the legality about how are decisions being made with these autonomous systems that are AI driven. So an example was, I think, not long was somebody's picture was on a bus, and it was being advertised on that bus, and it drove by a camera, and the camera was looking at a zebra crossing and issued a fine to that person. And he had something like 3,000 fines in one day with the bus going around. So the guy was absolutely shocked about that. But luckily, they had that kind of data tracing where they could trace back how did the machine make the decision. So I think number one is disclosure of information of where are you going and what is being collected. So I think that's the end user is concerned. And then if there is anything autonomous decision making, I think a lot of people need to be a little bit cautious if you're an institution deploying that. First of all, have that traceability where you can look at how the machine made the decision. And let people know that these things can make a mistake when dealing with a remote workforce, programmers spread across countries, continents, etc. There is always that one or two exceptions which the programmers probably never even thought of. And then if we get a little bit gun-ho and let's roll it out for the whole wide world, we just need to be a little bit cautious about that. In general, I think those are a few things that in data privacy that are the primary concern. And already governments in the EU, as I mentioned, and US, they're debating these topics. What can be collected? What is too much data? I think a lot of users can notice, let's say on their Facebook profile, you might be a very small person there at the background, and Facebook is now tagging you automatically. And you're like, wait a minute, I didn't even recognize myself in the photo, but it's learning really, really well of that. Now, I'll just change the focus on how can we use it effectively. So one thing is in HR hiring, I think a lot of people today notice that you can't even get an interview. So this probably will play a big role, and there are many companies that are at the moment using these automatic interviews to look at your profile, look at how you're reacting to the voice, not in a negative way, but just to see, can you react to situations and really bring the cream of the crop of the people, rather than relying on maybe very traditional algorithms and search criteria. For example, maybe you didn't put something on your CV or your LinkedIn profile, and you would never even get the light of day, and you're a fantastic candidate, lots of years of experience. I think the other thing that we see a lot is just knowing where staff are in the warehouse or in the building. It can be both from a health and safety to see, did they check out? Are they still in the building in case of an evacuation procedure? So these are some of the interesting use cases or the applications that we can see, the data being utilized for.
Looks good. What you are trying to say is, rather than focusing on the individuals, you focus on the business processes, and maybe a lot of informations which could be collected could be used more on the business rather than using on the people side of it. It's a mix of it. One of the biggest thing we have heard about is, and which has been going on for a long time, is about when the automations started coming up, IoT started coming, robotics starts coming up, was this, that a lot of jobs will be lost about it, because AI combined with IoT and robotics is automating a lot of mundane and repetitive tasks. And this question is to Jay. In this scenario, when a large number of processes might get automated, a large number of people who have been doing a traditional way of doing jobs, say in IT, people have been doing monitoring infrastructures, or application monitorings are happening, or in finance, we have it like a lot of people who does processes, claims which comes into the pictures. These are called repetitive jobs. In this scenario of AI getting into a large number of activities within an organization, how do you think the business in the future, I mean, the way the business is done will impact the skill sets of existing resources in your team? And how do you think people should be looking at what kind of a skill sets as an employer people will be looking at? I mean, work from home means that people can work from anywhere else also. So how will this resources who are working will make a change because of the AI?
Thanks, Ajay. I think, again, a fantastic question here, and a very interesting discussion as well. As Raj mentioned, I'm actually panicked, going onwards back to office. Is it going to be AI who is going to call me and alert about the lunch time and the break time and all that stuff? So the things are changing, and it's changing quite differently and rapidly. So it's bringing a lot of paradigm shift to the way which we are working. Definitely what we require going forward is a focused and skilled team that can work on any of these kind of emerging technologies. As people within IT, we need to build that team. We have heard that a lot of different designations which we have seen within the last couple of years, like the data scientist or like the crowd workers, so-called freelancers and stuff like that who are available. We need to make sure that we have the right skill set within ourselves. And why? Because the employees are definitely asking for more autonomy, because they want to choose different career path. With the AI coming on board, nobody wants to rely on a 9-to-5 job anymore, because there is a lot of things which is getting automated, which means they can pursue their passion, they can pursue their life goals, they can actually focus towards the different career paths. If you look at the advanced economies, which is highly service based, and compared to that, the other countries which are more labor intensive, they have this kind of an issue which is still there. But I think when it comes to automation and keep making sure that all those mundane repetitive tasks are getting automated, this brings us towards the conclusion that people will find different paths and ways for life, and that's something which is for sure. And I think the assistive robots, the so-called assistive robots, or the robots that works along with human, has already been there, but it's now going to be a new reality going forward for almost all of the countries. The pandemic has hit, or the pandemic has been truly global, which means every country is going through this situation, and they will try to find or prioritize these kind of investments to make sure that the case studies or the use cases for AI is there in place. One of the example which I was reading there in Japan, which is in a hotel in Sasebo, they've implemented this so-called humanoid robot, which is the Actroid, and they have been able to serve all the customers, including the receiving guest, or be it cleaning, or communicating in 3 different languages, carrying their luggages, and all that stuff has already been there for the last about 3.5 years. So which means this is going to be the new normal, and it will come a long way. And reskilling is one thing which is going to be very key for any organization, for that matter, to make sure that we have the right set of people who can actually manage these new co-worker who is going to be along with us. Yes, Ajay.
Great, Jay. So basically what we are looking at is, one is the reskilling of the employees, which is going to happen. Other is how the employees going to work. the full-time employees might go back to a consulting kind of an employees, because they could be recruited across the world. That is some changes which is going to come at, because people in an organization, specifically people who have money and who are at the realms of managing at that top, are looking at the resources across the world who can be hired instead of bringing them on board here. Uh, so AI, which was sitting on the edge already, is going to push a lot into our day-to-day environment. And we are looking at it. If you look at every country, because of the COVID pandemic, uh, everyone is having a contact tracing apps, which is monitoring the movement of the people. They're using facial recognitions. They're using AI to pinpoint a person on his exact locations at a given time. Now, this brings to another bigger questions, which is around ethics, ethical natures of our of AI. And this question I like to put out to each one of you, and you can take 2 minutes to answer, 1 or 2 minutes to answer these questions. How do you think, because the way the AI is penetrating into the core of it, I mean, to an extent that a person um, is so much now afraid of it, that every moment of it, how it might be used for by the hackers, it might be used by the criminals, because this information is there. So what are your thoughts about the ethical usage of AI in today's world? I will start with Jay, if you can.
Sure. So Ajay, one of the things which I have personally noticed is, as you rightly said, I mean, it's going on and changing the whole scenarios and the opportunities that are available. One thing, as industry experts, which we all need to maintain as a thumb rule, is implement the solution responsibly, and that responsibility is up to us. And I think the human treatment is something which is very important, because this cannot do the empathy or the compassion, which are the so-called values which should be there in any such corporate. So be there. I mean, be there, or be AI is not there or there. It doesn't take us away from having been more compassionate towards our people. Showing that empathy and stuff like that. And at the same time, we need to keep in mind that the AI is always imperfect. This is something which comes with a couple of examples. Like, we have seen the Microsoft chatbot long back, which has done some biases on the detecting the people's gender, and these systems actually were not able to kind of predict it properly. And similarly, the Amazon's determination on AI hiring and recruitment platform was another one where it cannot be fair. That example was there. So because it actually noticed that all the applications which came within the last couple of years was from men, and so it avoided women. So what it happens is, like, the bias can always happen. So the implementation should be responsibly done, and it is purely up to us. And people are talking about the technological singularity, which is still far away from here. So we need to maintain and make sure that the human treatment is considered very well when we implement the AI.
Okay, thank you, Jay. Raj, you have your 30 seconds.
Sure. So, I'd say that every technology has, its use cases, as Padre was saying, also Jay was saying. And it depends on how the use case has been deployed, right? If the use case is deployed for the right cause, it will give you immense benefits. If it is, it can be also done for the wrong cause, right? But I'll go to a bit more fundamental thing. Even if you're deploying it for the wrong cause, or let's say that you're deploying it for the right cause, but you are not deploying it well, it will backfire for you. So there are a lot of examples that I know of where the intent was right, but the result was wrong, because if you do not have a digital infra which can support the AI like the way it needs to be supported, from either from a compute perspective or from a network perspective, and the AI gives you a predictive analytics which is 1 minute after the event, what will you do about it, right? Then you'll say either the AI is wrong or it is not working. Actually, the AI is working, but the digital infra is not. And on top of that, the question that you asked earlier, right? If hackers get hold of your AI, which is running your fundamentally important systems, which is your heart of the systems, you are in a lot of trouble, right? So from that perspective, when you deploy the AI, whether for the right intent or not for the right intent, I'd say deploy it for the right intent. Deploying it right is also extremely important. Otherwise, it can backfire. It's a great technology, and if it backfires, it's not going to be good for you. Over to you, Ajay.
Thank you, Jay. Badri.
Yeah, so I think a couple of interesting points are, number one, how things have been evolving, let's say, on the threat landscape. So we see today, Microsoft taking a huge, information dump from all these different, let's say, sensors from the worldwide and making us, the advanced threat protection, product that goes far beyond just, your regular antivirus and firewall and similar to, let's say, Cisco AMP and so on. So what this really translates is to, yes, people are exploiting, but also the countermeasures to them are getting quite interesting. So I mean, in the old days, you would really have to rely on the virus definitions or let's say the solutions to those viruses. Now, you can see suspicious behavior evolving in your IT infrastructure. There's something happening on this computer is accessing, several other computers. Recently, I was introduced to a product that was actually looking at who is accessing what, and they've never accessed, let's say, this particular video feed, which they have really no reason to, and then start collating this data. So I think there are many use cases. I think companies also need to be a little bit responsible when they're disposing their hardware, because maybe you think at a high level that this is very outdated hardware, but we've seen in the past many cases where people are just getting shiploads of good computers and then daisy chaining them together, and then they have a pretty powerful computer to do some brute force attack or build themselves enough AI neural networks to do what they need to. So I mean, it's an interesting pivot to look at. And then also the cloud infrastructure. I mean, there are companies worldwide, maybe not as big as AWS and Microsoft Azure, but they're giving cloud infrastructure. So if someone starts accessing and gets very good at utilizing these tools, they can scale up their brute force attacks and their intelligence. And perhaps there is no visible gain because they're using these, almost endless capacities to figure out something and achieve a result which would be taken offline. So those are some things that I think we should consider on, let's say, the areas where the AI can be used against businesses.
Thank you, Badri. There's a limited time. We are almost running out of the time. I'll just take one question from the attendees, which is, see, we are looking at a very fast pace of AI adoption in our day-to-day life. What are the measures we should keep to secure humanism and sustain it for future? That's a question which is coming from. We need to make sure that we are securing the humanism and sustain it for the future by utilizing the benefits. So who is going to take this question? Any one of you?
Yeah, I'll take that question. Okay. So Ajay, I think that's a really nice question, because it's saying, okay, how are we going to live with robotics and that. I think in the market we're seeing this about co-botting, right? So you may be with a virtual assistant that is just getting you orientated around whether it's a piece of software, hardware, or the building. We've seen robots, let's say, being deployed at several banks, that's giving that kind of information in a world where people are scaling down their organizations, and there's the lack of knowledge between people is very varied, right? So I think that's a great application to make it human, and really find out applications where you feel as a human there is no value added me punching in a bunch of numbers every day and being a click laborer. I think those are the great applications that really spawn into that activities in a company which utilize your creativity, your human interaction, the things that AI can do, dealing with a grieving person in case of a loss, and focusing on those human interactions more.
Thank you, Badri.
If I can just add, Ajay, we all hear a strange lady telling us all the time which way to go when you're going from location A to location B. That's also an AI, and we've kind of learned to live with that lady all the time. We don't go from anywhere to anywhere without Google Maps. So, that's something which is a reality at this point of time.
Okay, another question. I think we can take one small question, one more. How can we use AI to improve the moral? I mean, in today's world, everybody is afraid that AI is going to take over their jobs. So in today's world, how do you use AI to improve the employees' morale?
I think, I answered a part of that earlier, Rajai, in terms of making sure, the values that which every company has got. We need to make sure that the reskilling happens in such a way that the employees are a part of this journey. So one of the exercise which we have done in our organization was actually to conduct a workshop. To make sure that the employees are a part of this, so they know that something like this is coming, and they need to understand what kind of business value this can actually bring onto the table. So involve them right from the beginning. That's one way of making sure that they understand the value of it. And at the same time, the resistance is the so-called resistance will be there within any organization, but this will actually help us to make sure the people are understanding the value, and they will contribute at least towards an extent where they can, as I mentioned earlier, they can choose their own different career paths. Within the same ecosystem, they can find out different things what they can do outside the normal work. So that's the way I personally believe that to inculcate the values and take them all along will actually really help to boost the morale.
Okay, I think we are towards the end of our presentation.
Yes, yes. Thank you everyone very, very much. We have some very interesting questions, and any of you can log in. I will send you the details and you can answer the questions to a lot of people because they've picked up some very interesting questions. So I hope you can answer these questions for them. I want to thank you, each and every one of you, for being a part of this session. It was a very interesting session, and thank you, Ajay, for moderating it so well. And I would now request all the attendees to move on to the next closing session for the Remote Workforce Summit by Ms. Ginva Baradi. She is the Chief Information Officer for HSBC. And I will take your leave and I will see you in the next session. Thank you everyone very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.